Hey guys, so are you wondering why we just didn't put up a greenhouse instead of a hoop house since greenhouses are already explicitly legal in Elmhurst? Do you know the differences between a greenhouse and a hoop house? To find out, keep watching. If you'd like to connect with other hoop house supporters, join our Facebook page. See the link below. If you want to check out the years-long media coverage of our hoop house story or join our email list, jump over to our website at elmhursthooplah.com. All right, here we go. Thanks for meeting with me today, Laura. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. So I am the Executive Director of Advocates for Urban Agriculture. We are a coalition of urban farms, school, home, community gardeners, urban ag practitioners, organizations that work together to expand urban agriculture in the Chicago region. So I've been here for about 2 years. Prior to that, I worked in the urban agriculture community here in Chicago for Windy City Harvest, which is a big urban ag workforce development program out of the Chicago Botanic Garden. So I've spent the last 10 years in Chicago working on urban ag, training people on how to grow their own food, making sure that food stays in the neighborhood and gets out to markets. And then prior to that, I worked on rural family-run farms across the country. So
cool.
Yeah.
So you were actually farming yourself, so you know a little something about actually growing the food.
Yes. So, greenhouses and hoop houses are an essential tool to growing in the Chicago area.
Right, let's get into that a little bit more technically. Can you give us sort of a primer on hoop houses versus greenhouses? Why would a backyard gardener want a hoop house versus a greenhouse?
Sure. So we often hear greenhouse and hoop houses as they're synonymous or the same thing, but they're not. They look similar to, I think, the untrained eye, but they are different. Greenhouses are typically heated and they have lights inside of them, and they're used in most cases for plant propagation. So, in January and February when we're growing our tomato and pepper seedlings, they need a heat source and a light source to propagate. There's usually a foundation, there's a hookup to an energy source, and they have thicker walls. Traditionally it's been glass that's been used, but now it's like a thick plastic that can be used. So they are pretty accessory and permanent, whereas
that's the key, is the permanent part for a greenhouse. May I interrupt for a second? Why do they need lights in this climate? Don't you have sunlight in a greenhouse?
So sunlight can come through in the greenhouse, but because we're in such a northern latitude, there is not a lot of sunlight over the winter, and so they need that additional light pretty close to the plant to propagate the seed and to get it to grow. So in greenhouses you're propagating, you're actively growing, whereas in hoop houses over the winter you're just trying to keep your crops alive. So there's not typically an additional light source or heat source, but you plant your fall winter crops in August, September. They get to a couple inches tall, and then once we reach, they're called the Persephone days, once the sunlight decreases, the plants will just hang out and survive. The spinach that we grow in hoop houses over the winter at a couple inches tall just will hang out from November to January, February. They'll survive because of the protection of the hoop house, and then once sunlight starts to increase again in March, they will pop right up. Mm-hmm. So hoop houses are different in that they're temporary because there's typically no kind of foundation. They're built and sunk directly into the yard or the ground, and they have a plastic sheeting over them that's 6 millimeters, which it can protect and keep the plant alive, but it's not nearly as thick as what a greenhouse would use. So hoop houses are used to get a jump start or to extend the season. So In the springtime, you can plant tomatoes in a hoop house in April versus late May, early June. And then in the fall, you can plant your crops and have them survive over the winter so you get a very early harvest.
Right, cool. Well, that's what we've been using it for, or rather that's what we had been using it for. So that's Laura. She's great, and I really support all the work that she does at AUA. I have a few things to add, which I forgot to ask during her interview, and I wanted you guys to know. Number one, hoop houses being temporary and sitting on the soil without a foundation allow the runoff of water that comes off the roof to seep into the soil. This is a much better situation for a town like Elmhurst than a greenhouse, which sits on a cement slab and disallows any water from seeping into the soil. In the hoop house situation, since the hoop house sits directly on the soil, the water seeps under the soil and there's crops in there that will start taking up the water immediately. This is certainly a better situation. 2, the passive solar heating provided by a hoop house keeps the soil warm through the winter. Not hot, but warm enough so that the soil doesn't freeze, so we can also harvest root vegetables, not just crops that are above the soil, but those that are below, which if the soil were allowed to freeze hard, we wouldn't be able to access. This saves the energy required to freeze or can the crops prior to the winter season, with the added bonus that we can eat fresh harvest through January and February. And did you know that carrots have a natural ability to go through the winter? In fact, they don't generate seed until their second year in the soil. What this means is they're designed to produce antifreeze, which comes in the form of sugar. So when we harvest our carrots in January and February, they're actually sweeter than they would be if we harvested them in the summer. Another benefit to keeping them in the ground. Comment below if you feel like you learned something from this video. And if you have any questions, put those in the comments section too. I'll answer them. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.